Above the sky, the clouds parted, and the terrifying pressure that had overshadowed Yuan Gate for the past 2 months gradually dissipated at that very moment. Lin Dong hovered in the sky, feeling the vast and almost limitless wave of primordial energy within him. A smile appeared at the corner of his lips. Indeed, the reincarnation stage was nothing short of extraordinary. The difference compared to before was like heaven and earth. No wonder, despite possessing many powerful abilities and the strength of 2 ancestral talismans, he had still been left in a sorry state by the 7th Demon King. However, if he were to encounter that fellow again now, Lin Dong felt confident that he would not suffer nearly as much. "Brother Lin Dong," a soft voice called from below, and then Qing Tan flew over. She looked Lin Dong up and down, and seeing that he was fine, she let out a sigh of relief. "Are you okay?" Ng Huan followed closely behind, concern evident in her ice-cold eyes. Lin Dong shook his head. "How long have I been in seclusion?" 2 years, Qing Tan replied. Lin Dong was taken aback, but when he saw the teasing smile at the corner of Qing Tan's mouth, he instantly grew angry, pinching her soft cheek. "You want to die? Daring to mock me?" "I'm sorry." Qing Tan was instantly reprimanded, covering her face with a look of grievance. Seeing her like this, Lin Dong couldn't help but smile inwardly. He patted her little face gently, knowing that she was trying to lighten the mood. Despite her position as the leader of the Dark Palace, she still acted so obediently in front of him, and he felt a sense of comfort in his heart. "You've been in seclusion for 2 months, Ng Huan said, smiling as she watched the siblings' playful exchange. 2 months, Lin Dong murmured, nodding. He had lost track of time while lost in that space. Fortunately, he had finally managed to break free. "Hee, junior brother Lin Dong, congratulations," a voice called out. As Qing Tan and the others approached, Ng Xuanzi, Zhou Tong, and the others also swiftly flew up into the air. Zhou Tong even clasped his fists and smiled at Lin Dong. Lin Dong returned the gesture, his gaze falling on Zhou Tong. He noticed that Zhou Tong's essence spirit was becoming more solid, and it wouldn't be long before he was able to form his physical body. At that point, he would fully recover. "I've been cultivating for so many years, still stuck at the peak of the revolution stage. Yet here you are, just a few years of cultivation, and you've already surpassed me. Truly." Ng Xuanzi sighed, a hint of ruefulness in his voice. "There are always some monsters in this world." Lin Dong smiled, about to speak, but his expression suddenly changed. A blazing fluctuation erupted from a nearby mountain peak. Was that the Flame Lord? What's happening? Ng Xuanzi and the others also noticed the change, their faces filled with surprise. Whoosh! A red light streaked through the distance, rapidly approaching them. It was the Flame Lord, but his body was entirely crimson, and he appeared somewhat ethereal. "What's going on?" Lin Dong asked, slightly startled. "The Chaos Demon Sea has encountered a problem," the Flame Lord replied, his gaze darkening. Lin Dong's pupils contracted. "Is it the alien demons?" "Yes, they've started moving," the Flame Lord nodded. "The Chaos Demon Sea is in total chaos now, with countless alien demons flooding out from beneath the sea. I suspect that within some time, the news will reach the Eastern Mystery region." Lin Dong's expression grew serious. The fact that the Flame Lord was showing such a reaction meant that whatever was happening was no small matter. "They seem to have discovered my true location," the Flame Lord added. Lin Dong's expression shifted slightly. He had once been to the Flame Lord's magma domain, where it seemed something terrifying was sealed. "Is it because of the thing sealed there? The thing you are suppressing, is it also a demon-suppressing prison?" The Flame Lord nodded, hesitated, then said, "The demon-suppressing prison I guard is one of the smallest of the 3, but inside, there's something extremely dangerous." "What's that?" "An ancient mount of the alien demon emperor, the great heavenly evil demon king." Hiss. Ng Xuanzi and the others gasped in shock. Although they hadn't heard of the great heavenly evil demon king, they were familiar with the name of the alien demon emperor. That was a terrifying existence even the Ancestral Talisman Master had only been able to seal after burning through the reincarnation process. Even being the mount of such a powerful being, it was undoubtedly formidable. The great heavenly evil demon king. Lin Dong's brow furrowed deeply. The great heavenly evil demon that the trio of Tian Yuanzi had once fused with was incredibly powerful. The great heavenly evil demon king was certainly no less terrifying. No wonder the Flame Lord had to personally suppress it. This great heavenly evil demon king's strength is probably just slightly weaker than the strongest of the demon kings, the heavenly King Hall. If it escapes, it will be a nightmare to deal with, the Flame Lord said gravely. Lin Dong nodded. Do you need my help? Lin Dong asked. Yes, but it's not to help me, the Flame Lord replied without hesitation. At this moment, Lin Dong possessed the ability and qualification to assist them. Then who should I help? Lin Dong asked, confused. Help the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness. The Flame Lord spoke gravely. From the information I've received, the demon prison has discovered the whereabouts of the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness. He was severely injured back then, and now is a critical time for his recovery. I want you to protect him. The demon prison knows his current condition too. If the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness is injured again now, it would severely weaken our strength. The Lord of the Primordial Wilderness was also one of the 8 ancient lords, making him one of their most powerful warriors. If something happened to him, the consequences would be disastrous. What about the Thunder Lord and the others? Lin Dong asked, still puzzled. Such an important matter couldn't have escaped the Thunder Lord's attention. The demon prison came prepared. The Thunder Lord went to scout the demon prison and is now trapped. The Lord of Space and the Dark Lord are also being targeted by the demon prison and can't escape for the time being. That's why I need your help, the Flame Lord explained. As for the Lord of Life and Death, she was severely wounded back then, second only to Junior Sister. She is probably still in the reincarnation stage now. The Lord of Life and Death hasn't fallen? Lin Dong was surprised. The Life and Death Ancestral Talisman was extremely unique, having already taken human form in the form of Mu Lingshan. According to the Undying Sacred Whale Clan, the Lord of Life and Death was their ancestor, but when they opened his tomb, they found no remains, only an egg. That egg was the Life and Death Ancestral Talisman transformed, and it later hatched into Mu Lingshan. The Lord of Life and Death controls life and death. She is one of the hardest to fall. She should still be alive, though she hasn't awakened yet, the Flame Lord said. Lin Dong couldn't help but click his tongue. Truly, someone who controlled the Life and Death Ancestral Talisman. It must be incredibly difficult even to die. To fully suppress the great heavenly evil demon king, I will have to disperse my clone. So, you need to hurry, the Flame Lord said, his body beginning to fluctuate more violently, a clear sign that his clone was about to dissipate. Lin Dong nodded. With such chaos in the Chaos Demon Sea, he indeed needed to check on the Gu clan, Tang Xinlian, Mu Lingshan, and the others. If the Chaos Demon Sea was affected, the place they were in wouldn't be spared from the unrest. After the Flame Lord finished speaking, he glanced at Ying Huanhuan standing nearby. After a brief hesitation, he said, I'm afraid I can't stay by your side this time. Ying Huanhuan lightly nodded. Her delicate, cold hand gently grasped Lin Dong's large hand as she softly said, he won't let anything happen to me. The Flame Lord sighed inwardly but said no more. Suddenly, flames erupted from his body, and when the flames dissipated, his body had vanished without a trace. Lin Dong understood that the Flame Lord had recalled his clone. It seemed the crisis was indeed significant, or he wouldn't have been forced to pull back all his strength. Sect Master, I'll head directly to the Chaos Demon Sea. Right now, the demon prison's focus is on the Chaos Demon Sea, so the Eastern Mystery region should be relatively safe for now, Lin Dong said, not hesitating further. He turned to Ying Xuanzi. Brother Lin Dong, take me with you. I've never been to the Chaos Demon Sea. Qing Tan said urgently, afraid Lin Dong would leave her behind. I'm coming too, Ying Huanhuan said, her icy eyes meeting Lin Dong's. Lin Dong gave a bitter smile at the sight. After a brief moment of thought, he nodded. Qing Tan, now the master of the Dark Ancestral Talisman and wielding the Dark Sacred Scythe, could hold her own even against a true king-level alien demon king. As for Ying Huanhuan, Her strength had reached a level even he couldn't fully assess. Having her accompany him would add significant battle power. Of course, the most important thing was that he didn't feel comfortable leaving her behind alone. Then the three of us will go together. Upon hearing this, Qingtan immediately broke into a joyful smile, her charming face now even more radiant. Since that's the case, then go ahead. It's good to have each other's backs, Xuanzi nodded. With the three of them, there was little to worry about. Sect Master, after we leave, please temporarily seal the sect. Just in case anything happens, you can contact me. I've already refined the space ancestral talisman, so I can return quickly, Lin Dong said. Though the demon prison had focused its forces on the Chaos Demon Sea, it was still better to be cautious. Understood, Xuanzi nodded. Seeing this, Lin Dong no longer hesitated. He extended his arms and gently drew Huan and Qingtan into his embrace. His arms encircled their slender waists, one soft as a snake, the other cold as jade, giving him a fleeting feeling of reluctance. However, Lin Dong wasn't in the mood to enjoy such feelings. With a thought, silver light erupted from his body, and the surrounding space began to twist violently. When the silver light finally faded, everyone looked up and saw that the three figures had vanished amidst the distortion of space, leaving behind only the violent ripples of space spreading outward. Xuanzi gazed at the vanishing figures, letting out a quiet sigh. He exchanged a glance with Zhou Tong and the others, silently lamenting, "This world is starting to fall into chaos." Chaos Demon Sea, Northern Sea region. Above the vast, endless ocean, scattered clouds lazily floated by, and the sunlight pierced through the clouds, casting shimmering reflections on the sea, creating an atmosphere of perfect tranquility. However, this peace did not last long. The space in the sky suddenly warped, and as silver light flared, three figures materialized out of thin air. The sea breeze blew in their faces, and Lin Dong raised his gaze. As he looked out at the familiar ocean, a hint of nostalgia flickered in his eyes. After escaping from the Eastern Mystery region all those years ago, he had come here, carrying the burdens of what he sought to reclaim, enduring years of bitter training. Back then, he was like a tiny, insignificant stone in this vast ocean, facing countless dangers. But in the end, he had walked out alive. When he first arrived at the Chaos Demon Sea, he was nothing, worthless. Yet when he left, his name had spread throughout the entire sea. Now, as he returned, his strength had grown to the point where he no longer had to look up to anyone. The young man who once fled for his life was now transformed, soaring through the skies. Chaos Demon Sea. I, Lin Dong, have returned? Lin Dong tilted his head back and let out a long roar, his voice like thunder, echoing across the ocean for miles. Huan watched Lin Dong, whose expression was filled with fervor, and smiled softly. So, after leaving the Eastern Mystery region, you came here? Lin Dong took a deep breath and nodded with a smile. Who could have known that back then, when he first arrived here, he was so humble, like an ant? If it hadn't been for his cleverness, he might have long since perished in this ocean. Must have been tough, huh? Huan's gaze softened as she looked at Lin Dong, her beautiful eyes filled with sympathy. Though I missed you terribly those 3 years, I'm sure you had a hard time. She could feel the complicated emotions Lin Dong had toward this place, and she guessed that he had gone through a lot here, facing life and death situations. At times, perhaps even he didn't know whether he would truly live to return to the Eastern Mystery region. As she thought of this, Huan lightly bit her lower lip, feeling a twinge of guilt for her earlier behavior when she had seen Lin Dong return. She had acted a bit cold, but at the time, who knew what he had truly gone through? He had hidden all that pain behind his smile, making it impossible for anyone to see. Lin Dong looked at Huan, whose eyes glistened with tenderness, and his heart was gently stirred. He then reached out and wrapped his arm around her slender waist, grinning. What can I say? I'm a man, and these things are just part of what we have to bear. Lin Dongji, who offended you here back then? Let's turn things upside down for them. Qingtan also spoke up, her large eyes flashing with killing intent. Although she always appeared cute and obedient in front of Lin Dong, she was, after all, the mistress of the Dark Temple. Having walked out of the Dark Tribunal, her pale hands were stained with enough blood to make anyone tremble. "I don't need you to avenge me." Lin Dong laughed as he flicked her snow-white forehead, then scanned the area around them. "I wonder which part of the Chaos Demon Sea we're in now." Though he could quickly travel from the Eastern Mystery region to the Chaos Demon Sea using the space Ancestral Talisman, the vastness of this sea made it impossible for him to pinpoint his exact location. "Let's move forward and see." Lin Dong shook his head after failing to recognize anything and pulled the two women forward at high speed. The Chaos Demon Sea was enormous, each sea region vast in size. The area they were in seemed rather remote, as they had been flying for over 10 minutes without seeing a single soul. Just as Lin Dong furrowed his brow, Huan's delicate finger, as white as jade, pointed toward the western horizon. "There are people over there, and there's a disturbance from the alien demons." Lin Dong followed her gaze, but could not detect anything. His heart skipped a beat, realizing that Huan's strength was becoming harder to fathom. "I'm just particularly sensitive to the aura of the alien demons," she explained, sensing his surprise. Lin Dong nodded. There was no time for further conversation, so he held onto the two women, silver light flashing, and in the next moment, they were hundreds of miles away. Several times, the space was torn apart as they traveled. After a few minutes, Lin Dong finally stopped. His gaze turned forward, and he saw more than 10 massive ships speeding across the vast sea. Behind these ships, dark clouds rolled in, the evil demonic aura making the sky grow heavy and murky. The demonic clouds quickly caught up with the ships, and countless alien demons surged out like raindrops, charging onto the ships. A cacophony of battle cries and screams echoed across the sky. However, their resistance proved ineffective. In just a few dozen breaths, 3 large ships were bloodily massacred, and the air was thick with the stench of blood. Lin Dong observed the scene from afar. On those ships, various flags were flying. These appeared to be merchant ships. Merchant ships? Could some of them belong to the Gu clan? Lin Dong's heart stirred. He scanned the ships carefully and was surprised to spot a familiar banner flying on one of the nearer ships, a banner with the ancient character Gu. "So there really are Gu clan merchant ships here? It seems we're not far from the celestial wind sea region," Lin Dong murmured, furrowing his brow. He then waved his sleeve, and with a flash of silver light, the 3 of them vanished again. On the massive merchant ship, people were packed tightly together, many of their faces filled with fear. They looked toward the rear, where the demonic clouds surged, and desperate screams rang out one after another. At the bow of the Gu clan merchant ship, dozens of Gu clan disciples huddled together. Their faces were pale, but compared to the others, they were better trained. At least they still gripped their weapons tightly, and their primordial energy flowed around them. "Brother Yuntian, what do we do now?" one of the Gu disciples asked, his voice trembling as he watched the approaching demonic clouds. At that moment, the disciples looked toward the center of their group, where a handsome young man stood, his face grim as he stared at the impending doom. "These creatures are too powerful. We can't stop them," he said after a brief pause. Then, gritting his teeth, he decisively ordered, "Xun'er, take the others in batches and leave by small boats." By his side was a young girl in a light green dress. She had a delicate and charming appearance, but when she heard his words, a bitter smile appeared on her face. "Brother Yuntian, you saw their speed. We won't be able to escape." The girl was none other than Guya, the first person Lin Dong met when he came to the Chaos Demon Sea all those years ago. The intricacies of the world were truly beyond explanation. Guya was no longer the timid girl she had once been. Her appearance was elegant, and her aura stood out even among the talented Gu clan disciples. Yuntian, hearing her response, stiffened. He looked around at the fearful faces of the other disciples and sighed in despair. "We barely escaped from Martial Gathering Island, and now we can't even avoid this calamity." The Gu clan disciples around them shared the same sorrowful expression. The changes of the past month felt surreal. Who could have imagined that the entire Chaos Demon Sea would be in such chaos now? Suddenly, the shrill sound of wind tearing through the air reached them. The demonic clouds had caught up. From within, countless blood-red, vicious eyes locked onto the ship. Heh. A demonic shadow emerged from the clouds, its eyes gleaming with mockery as it stared at the Gu clan's merchant ship. It licked its lips, and a bloodthirsty aura spread, accompanying the overwhelming demonic energy. Seeing this, the already pale faces of Yuntian and the others turned even whiter. The strength of this demonic shadow was likely on par with a superpower at the revolution stage, far beyond their ability to resist. Is today the day we perish here? Yuntian muttered, while Guya clenched her teeth tightly. She gripped her long sword, her small hands trembling. The faces of the surrounding disciples were filled with hopelessness. Guya? Just as they were about to give up hope, a surprised voice suddenly rang out from behind them. Everyone turned in shock, only to see 3 figures appear out of thin air in the sky. You. Guya froze for a moment, then a look of joy spread across her face. Lin Dong. Lin Dong. Yuntian exclaimed, surprised. He turned to look, and sure enough, in the sky above them stood a young man with a smile on his face. It could only be Lin Dong. What are you doing here? Lin Dong smiled at Guya and the others and asked, his gaze briefly shifting toward the approaching demonic clouds. Lin Dong, quickly leave. Guya snapped, her joy vanishing in an instant. She urged, leave now. These demonic creatures are too strong. You have to go. Lin Dong smiled at her anxious expression. Instead of fleeing, he stepped down from the ship's bow and called out to her with a grin. What a coincidence. The first time I came to the Chaos Demon Sea, I met you. Guya saw this and couldn't help but smile bitterly, shaking his head. His big brother Lin Dong was sharp-witted in the past, but how had he become so slow-witted now? Couldn't he see the dire situation they were in? Ah, brother Lin Dong, it's been so long. Well, no point in saying anything now. If we die together, at least it means we were fated to meet. Gu Yuan sighed. The demonic clouds were already sweeping toward them. Even if Lin Dong wanted to flee, it would be too late. I don't want to die. Lin Dong chuckled and shook his head. His gaze turned toward the dark clouds of demons. Are you all afraid of this thing? As he spoke, Lin Dong smiled and raised his hand. His palm clenched, and the once clear sky suddenly darkened with the gathering of thunder. In an instant, it transformed into a massive thunderous hand that struck down on the demonic clouds. Boom, boom, boom. The thunderous hand swept through, and the demonic clouds exploded instantly, countless alien demons ensnared by the thunder and turned to ashes, vanishing without a trace. The thunderous hand dissipated, and the sharp screeching from the sky came to an abrupt stop, as did the screams from the many merchant ships around them. Everyone stared blankly upwards, where countless alien demons had turned to ash and were now drifting down. The only one left floating was the most powerful demonic shadow, stunned as if it hadn't recovered from the unexpected change. Of course, it wasn't just the demon that was stunned. Even Gu Yuntian and the others had their expressions frozen, clearly caught off guard by what had just happened. The once chaotic sea was now eerily silent, and the scene looked strangely comical. The sea was still, the sea breeze blowing and slowly carrying away the lingering scent of blood. On the decks of dozens of massive ships, countless people were still staring blankly at the sky, clearly still trying to process the sudden shift in events. The fierce demonic creatures that had previously slaughtered them were all dead? How could this be? Some people struggled to turn their heads, looking at each other with confusion in their eyes. I didn't expect there to be an alien demon general. Lin Dong, however, paid no attention to the now silent sea. His eyes were still fixed on the stunned alien demon general in the sky, a faint smile on his lips. Lin Dong, big brother? Guya and the others slowly came to their senses. They turned their heads and looked at Lin Dong with bewilderment, their mouths opening and dry voices slipping out. Did you do this? It was no wonder they were so shocked. Back at Marshall Gathering Island, they had seen Lin Dong's extraordinary talent, but that had only been among the younger generation. Later, in the Flame Deity Palace, he had made quite a name for himself, but even then, he was still far from a super powerhouse in the revolution stage. Yet, this move he had just made, even someone at the revolution stage would find it hard to pull off. In just over a year, how had he grown so strong? "Let's deal with this guy first," Lin Dong said with a smile, his eyes narrowing as he looked up at the alien demon general. A cold gleam flashed in his black pupils. The alien demon general suddenly snapped back to reality, his eyes filled with terror as he looked toward the massive ship where the Gu clan was located. He shouted harshly, "Kid, how dare you kill members of my demon clan? Are you seeking death?" "Heh, I've already killed the 9th demon king. What makes you think I'm afraid of a lowly underling like you?" Lin Dong said with a teasing smile. "What did you say?" The alien demon general's pupils shrank as he looked at Lin Dong, who wore a mocking grin. A sense of unease rose within him. His gaze shifted, and suddenly a powerful surge of demonic energy erupted around him. As the dark energy spread, his figure turned into a black flash and he rapidly retreated. He was actually trying to escape? The people on the sea stared in disbelief at the retreating alien demon general. He was supposed to be a super powerhouse capable of matching those in the revolution stage, a dominant figure in the Chaos Demon Sea. Yet now, he was fleeing without a fight? Was it because of that person? Some eyes subtly turned toward the thin figure at the bow of the Gu clan's ship. What kind of power was this? Without lifting a finger, he had already made the enemy retreat in fear? Lin Dong's eyes were cold as he watched the fleeing alien demon general. Slowly, he raised his hand and clenched it. Buzz. As Lin Dong's hand closed, everyone saw the space in the distance suddenly distort and collapse. The alien demon general, caught right in the center of the collapsing space, was crushed by an immense force, his body exploding into a burst of gore. A blood-curdling scream echoed as a stream of demonic energy shot out from the collapsed space. But before it could escape, a black hole appeared and sucked it in, disappearing without a trace. The sea surface was once again quiet and silent. Lin Dong withdrew his gaze and slowly lowered his hand. His eyes turned to Guya and the others, who were standing to the side, speechless. He smiled and said, "What are you all doing here?" Guya was the first to snap out of it. She gave Lin Dong a strange look and said, "We were being chased by these demonic creatures all the way, and then we ended up here in the Northern Sea region. Fortunately, we ran into you, Brother Lin Dong. Otherwise..." "So, this is the Northern Sea region?" Lin Dong nodded slightly. The Northern Sea region wasn't far from the Celestial Wind Sea region, so it made sense that they had encountered each other here. "Thank you, Brother Lin Dong," Guyan Tian said as he regained his senses, cupping his hands in gratitude. There was a hint of awe in his eyes. Having witnessed the scene earlier, he now understood that Lin Dong was no longer the same person as before. Lin Dong smiled and waved his hand. After a moment's thought, he said, "I want to go to Martial Gathering Island. Can you take me there?" The Primordial Wilderness Tower was located on Martial Gathering Island, so if he wanted to help the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness, he had to first reach Martial Gathering Island. Martial Gathering Island? Upon hearing this, Gu Yuntian and the others' expressions changed slightly, and a trace of fear appeared in their eyes. "What's wrong?" Lin Dong asked, noticing their expressions. "Brother Lin Dong, right now, Martial Gathering Island is not a place one can easily go. It's practically a dead zone." Guya bit her lip and said, "We actually escaped from Martial Gathering Island." Lin Dong furrowed his brows. It seemed that Martial Gathering Island had already been attacked. "Brother Lin Dong, you've been gone for so long. You probably don't know the current situation in the Chaos Demon Sea. 2 months ago, many of those demonic creatures appeared suddenly in the Chaos Demon Sea. Their strength is incredibly powerful, and wherever they go, no force can stop them. Moreover, their methods are extremely cruel. Wherever their demonic aura passes, nothing is left," Guya explained. "Our Celestial Wind Sea region was also affected. At first, the 3 great cave heavens and the 5 major families formed an alliance, but even after our first encounter with those demonic creatures, we suffered heavy losses and were utterly defeated." Lin Dong nodded slightly. The forces in the Celestial Wind Sea region had no way to stand against the terrifying power of the demon prison, so their defeat was to be expected. After that, we retreated to Martial Gathering Island. When those demonic creatures got closer, the primordial wilderness tower on the island suddenly activated its defenses, protecting the entire island. That was the only reason the demonic creatures' attacks were held back. Since Martial Gathering Island could offer protection, the news spread quickly. All the forces from the Celestial Windsea region rushed to the island, crowding in. But this also led to more and more demonic creatures being drawn to the island. Now, Martial Gathering Island is practically surrounded, and no one can enter or leave. We only managed to escape amidst the chaos. As Guya spoke, her eyes dimmed slightly. Sister Meng-Chi and Sister Gu-Yin are still on the island. If the island's defenses are breached, I'm afraid no one there will survive. The other members of the Gu clan also showed sorrowful expressions. All of their forces were gathered on Martial Gathering Island. If it were to fall, the Gu clan would be completely wiped out. Lin Dong nodded. The defenses were probably set up by the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness himself. However, he was currently in a critical period of recovery and clearly couldn't give his all. The demonic creatures likely hadn't attacked yet because they were waiting for truly powerful reinforcements. I need to go. Lin Dong turned to Guya and the others, smiling. If you don't want to go, you can just draw me a sea chart. Brother Lin Dong, I'll take you there. Guya bit her lip and said, Xiaya. Guyan Tian was startled when he heard this. Martial Gathering Island was practically a death trap now. It was not only dangerous to enter, but even approaching it was certain death. With Brother Lin Dong here, nothing will happen. Guya shook her head and looked at Lin Dong, her voice filled with great confidence in him. On the side, Ing Huan Huan and Qing Tan exchanged suspicious glances, then turned to Lin Dong. Lin Dong noticed their gazes and cleared his throat. After a moment, he nodded. Then you can come with me to Martial Gathering Island. I'm on an important mission there to protect someone. Protect someone? Guya and the others were stunned. Martial Gathering Island was considered the base of their 5 major families. Who was Lin Dong going there to protect? The senior inside the Primordial Wilderness Tower, Lin Dong smiled but didn't elaborate further. Primordial Wilderness Tower? Guya and the others were surprised. Soon, they seemed to have some inkling. The Primordial Wilderness Tower had always been mysterious, and even their 5 major families had never been able to investigate it thoroughly. Now, could the defenses emanating from the tower be the work of that mysterious senior? We're pressed for time, so let's head to Martial Gathering Island first. Yuntian, you and the others should find a safe place to hide for now. Lin Dong said no more. He turned his gaze toward Guya, and upon receiving her nod, he waved his sleeve. Silver light burst forth, enveloping the 3 of them. The silver light flickered, distorting space. When it faded, the 4 of them had vanished into thin air. Gu Yuntian watched the 4 disappear and couldn't help but sigh, a glimmer of hope rising in his heart. Lin Dong's abilities were now beyond comprehension, but if he could really break the deadlock on Martial Gathering Island, then the Gu clan might still have a chance for survival. I hope you truly have the power to resolve this, he muttered. With Guya leading the way, Lin Dong no longer paused. Occasionally, they encountered some alien demons along the way, but he dealt with them swiftly and didn't linger. In just an hour, they had entered the Celestial Windsea region. As they entered the region, Lin Dong felt a sudden surge of demonic energy filling the air. Even the sea was howling with ominous winds. The 4 of them tore through the space once more. A few minutes later, they slowed down, their eyes growing serious as they gazed ahead. At the edge of the sea, a vast wave of demonic energy surged forward, the sky above thick with dark clouds. Countless sharp, eerie shrieks echoed, and the terrifying demonic energy caused the once calm sea to churn into monstrous waves. Peering through the demonic army, Lin Dong saw an island in the distance, shrouded by a deep yellow energy barrier. Looking through the energy shield, he could just make out an ancient stone tower on the island, barely visible. It was the Primordial Wilderness Tower. The enormous energy shield looked like an inverted giant bowl, hanging in the sky and enveloping the entire Martial Gathering Island. The deep yellow glow it emitted was heavy and profound, giving an impression of indestructibility. On Marshall Gathering Island, the scene was chaotic. Everywhere, people filled the shores and the island, but their faces were filled with panic. They stared fearfully at the area beyond the energy shield, where the sky had turned pitch black, filled with floating demonic clouds. Within the clouds, numerous demonic figures could be seen moving, their shrill cries carrying across the sea and stirring up terrifying waves. The demonic energy relentlessly pressed against the deep yellow shield, causing ripples to spread across its surface, making everyone's hearts race. They all knew this energy shield was their last line of defense. If it shattered, they would be exposed to the alien demon's fangs, with no hope of survival. At that moment, inside a pavilion at the island's center, the atmosphere was heavy. Figures sat within, their faces dark and grim. The energy shield seems to be weakening. A voice suddenly spoke in the tense silence, causing everyone's eyelids to twitch. Let's hear your thoughts. What should we do now? The speaker was an old man with graying hair. His brow was furrowed, and behind him stood two tall, beautiful women, Gu Mingqi and Gu Yin. What else can we do? Besides hiding on Marshall Gathering Island, do we have any other options? A cold voice answered from across the room. It was an elderly man in gray robes, standing with a familiar figure behind him, Wei Zhan of the Wei clan. Then just wait here to die. The Gu clan elder shot him a glance and said flatly, Gu Tong, if my Wei clan is doomed, do you think your Gu clan can escape? The gray-robed elder snapped, his anger rising. Seeing the two clans bickering again, the others could only shake their heads in resignation. Can you two be quiet? What's the point of arguing now? A voice shouted from the center of the room. Three figures sat at the prominent seats. Their robes were different, but their words carried significant weight. They were the leaders of the three great cave heavens in the celestial wind sea region. Among them was a familiar face, Wu Xian, the leader of the evil wind cave heaven, who had some past entanglements with Lin Dong. His face was also darkened by the gravity of the current situation. The alien demons outside Marshall Gathering Island are incredibly strong. If we try to confront them head-on, we may not stand a chance, Wu Xian said, his gaze drifting to the energy shield where the violent demonic aura surged. If there's any hope for change, it's likely we'll have to rely on that senior inside the primordial wilderness tower. As the words fell, everyone in the pavilion turned their gaze toward the five great clans. After all, the primordial wilderness tower had always been under their management. No one had ever noticed that such a terrifying existence resided within the tower. Under the scrutiny of the crowd, the clan heads of the five great clans all shook their heads bitterly. The patriarch of the Gu clan, Gu Tong, let out a wry smile and said, in the past, we could enter the tower, but we were unable to access the final level. Ever since that deep yellow barrier appeared, even we have been barred entry. That senior seems unwilling to be disturbed, the Su clan patriarch added with a nod. Why not give it another try? Wu Xian suggested after some thought. At this point, they were at their wits' end but reluctant to abandon their final hope. Hearing this, the five clan heads sighed and nodded in reluctant agreement. However, they knew well that it would likely be futile. Wu Xian, noticing the somber atmosphere, exchanged glances with the two other cave masters of the three great cave heavens. All three sighed inwardly and shook their heads. Could it really be that this time, catastrophe was unavoidable? Something's wrong. Just as the oppressive silence filled the room, someone suddenly burst in with urgency, shouting, There's someone approaching Marshall Gathering Island from outside. They're trying to enter. Everyone was stunned. At such a critical moment, someone dared to come to Marshall Gathering Island? Were they seeking death? Surprised and curious, the crowd rushed out of the pavilion and looked into the distance. Beyond the deep yellow barrier, a few figures hovered in midair. Demonic aura churned around them, and in the distance, a vast number of alien demons were converging toward them. That's Xiaoye and Lin Dong. Gu Mingqi and Gu Yin stared at the figures outside the barrier in shock before crying out in surprise. Lin Dong. At the mention of that name, everyone froze. The faces of the Wei clan members darkened as they recalled the one who had caused them so much trouble in the past. Wu Xian frowned slightly, clearly remembering the name as well. Grandfather, That's Lin Dong. He once helped our Gu clan. Let them in quickly. If the alien demons surround them, it will be disastrous. Gu Mingqi pleaded anxiously. As soon as she finished speaking, the Wei clan patriarch retorted, "Impossible. This barrier only permits exit, not entry. Moreover, we haven't confirmed their true intentions. You all know how cunning the alien demons are. What if they're disguises? If we let them in and something happens, who will take responsibility?" Hearing this, many of the powerful figures around nodded slightly. At such a tense moment, taking unnecessary risks was unwise. Gu Mengqi's face turned pale with anger as she glared at the Wei clan patriarch. She knew he was deliberately making trouble. Gu Tong sighed, unwilling to go against the consensus. The Gu clan couldn't afford to act impulsively under such circumstances. The Wei clan truly was detestable. Frustrated, Gu Mengqi stomped her foot and shouted, her voice amplified by primordial energy, "Lin Dong, leave quickly. Be careful of the alien demons." Outside the barrier, Lin Dong heard her voice and scanned the scene. He quickly understood the situation and smiled faintly. These people hadn't changed. They were as troublesome as ever. "No need. I'll come in myself," Lin Dong replied with a calm smile toward the island. A derisive snort came from the Wei clan members at his words. Even the alien demons couldn't break through this barrier. Did Lin Dong think he could? How laughable. "Lin Dong, leave immediately," Wei Zhen shouted, his tone full of ridicule. His eyes, however, betrayed his glee at the sight of the approaching alien demons. Lin Dong likely wouldn't even have the chance to escape. Wu Xian, frowning deeply, felt a vague sense of unease, but chose to remain silent out of caution. As Wu Xian's frown deepened, dazzling silver light suddenly flickered outside the barrier. The distorted space made Wu Xian's expression shift dramatically, his eyes filling with shock. Under Wu Xian's astonished gaze, the space before them twisted, and 4 figures emerged in a flash of silver light. The crowd was stunned. Their pupils contracted as they stared at the unexpected arrivals. Lin Dong had actually made it inside? "You were the one telling me to leave, weren't you?" Lin Dong's dark eyes locked onto the now stiff-faced Wei Zhen as he asked with a faint smile. Wei Zhen, feeling an inexplicable surge of fear, instinctively retreated behind the Wei clan patriarch. "Lin Dong, what are you trying to do?" The Wei clan patriarch's voice turned harsh as he sensed trouble. "Annoying," Lin Dong said coldly, flicking his finger. A blast of force shot out, striking the Wei clan patriarch. The crowd around them gasped in surprise, and even Wu Xian's eyelids twitched nervously. The head of the Wei family had broken into the revolution stage just last year. The Wei family experts were enraged when they saw their leader being attacked, but before they could scold, Lin Dong stepped forward, and an overwhelming aura erupted, enveloping the entire island. The terrifying pressure from this aura immediately silenced the once chattering island. Revolution stage? This time, even Wu Xian could no longer suppress his shock and blurted out in disbelief. Revolution stage? On the pavilion, the leaders of the various forces from the Celestial Wind Sea region were all visibly shaken, their eyes filled with astonishment as they looked at the young figure. Could it be that he was a peak expert at the revolution stage? Gu Tong was stunned. He had heard Gu Mengqi and the others speak of Lin Dong, but he had only thought of him as a junior. Who would have expected that the so-called junior would now be a peak expert at the revolution stage? Gu Mengqi and Gu Yin beside him both covered their red lips in surprise, their eyes filled with astonishment. So it's the Lord of Wu Xian Cave, Lin Dong said, his gaze shifting slightly toward Wu Xian, a playful smile appearing on his face. Under Lin Dong's gaze, Wu Xian's body stiffened, cold sweat beading on his forehead. He let out a dry laugh and said, so it's young Master Lin Dong. He wasn't someone who didn't know how to read the situation. Although he had reached the revolution stage, he was well aware of how far his power fell short compared to a true expert in the revolution stage. If Lin Dong chose to attack now, he probably wouldn't have the strength to resist. Lin Dong smiled faintly, not paying much attention to him. His gaze turned toward Gu Mengqi and Gu Yin, and with a cupped fist salute, He smiled. Miss Mengqi, Miss Guyan, it's been a long time. Lin Dong ignored all the leaders around him, focusing only on greeting Gu Mengqi and Gu Yan. His behavior was clearly somewhat inappropriate, but with his terrifying strength, no one dared to express any dissatisfaction. Everyone lowered their heads, their faces full of respect. Gu Mingqi and Gu Yan exchanged glances and then both smiled warmly at Lin Dong, their smiles enchanting and their eyes filled with joy. Lin Dong gave a casual nod to the two of them, before turning his attention to the top of the stone tower at the center of the island. There, he sensed an ancient and powerful aura.